Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to a few of you. Welcome to the community briefing. My name is Gregory Sneed, and today is the 20th of January, 2022. Our guest today is Melvin Lindsey, and he's going to be talking to us about money and raising money and handling money. So he'll be joining us shortly. My name is Gregory Sneed, and I'm in financial services. The name of my company is Lifesaver Financial Services, and I help my clients keep more of the money that they make. If you would like to keep more money, then I'd love to help you, because I believe that when you feel better about your money, you feel better about your life. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the queen of our community briefing, Ms. Crystal Mitchell.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Glad to have you. We are excited about our guest today. I am Crystal Mitchell. I am the co-director Recycling Black Dollars. I have my own business, and I have several other podcasts, The Business Zone on Fridays at 3:00, and as well as Conversations on the Patio on Mondays at 1:00. And we talk about retirement there. We want to welcome you. The community briefing is a platform for all of us. It is to bring our stakeholders and our leaders in our community that are making impact to change how we live as Black people in our community. This platform is powered and supported and sponsored by Recycling Black Dollars, as well as the Black Business Association, and with an amazing team, Mr. Greg Sneed, Mr. Stephen Turner, myself, and Ms. Robin Billups. Ms. Robin Billups may pop in, but that's the team. So we want to welcome you. Put your information in the chat room. This is a networking platform. We want to know who you are, what you do, and then in the true form of being a Recycling Black Dollars, we want you to support each other's business so that we can grow, not just through information, but we can grow through economics, because that's the only way we're going to get out of the situations that we're in, guys. So welcome. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Greg.
Thank you, Crystal. Just a few housekeeping items. We appreciate you guys keeping yourselves on mute during the call so that we minimize the background noises and what have you. If you have questions for our guests today, please put them in the chat and then we'll have some time on the back end for some further questions. We may have a presentation from, I think, Colette Moore, our PCR CDFI correspondent, and we may have a visit from Dr. Mays to give us an update on what's going on with the latest variants, Omicron, and whatever comes thereafter. All right, so without further delay, we're going to talk about Mr. Melvin Lindsey. Melvin, when I heard that name, I don't know if you know of the disc jockey from back east in Washington, D.C., and he created the Quiet Storm concept with WHUR, and that was in 1976, which is when I started in college radio at the same time. So when I hear Melvin Lindsey, that's as soon as I go back to the Quiet Storm. I don't know if you've ever heard his broadcast or heard of him, but that's what came to mind. Do you go by Mel or Melvin?
Well, my parents call me Melvin usually when I'm in trouble, and everyone else calls me Mel. And I after heard of Melvin Lindsey. I used to go back to DC for the Black Congressional Caucus early in my career. And every time I went to a restaurant and I said Melvin Lindsey, I got special treatment. So appreciative of the name.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, Mel Lindsey is a CFA, chartered financial analyst, and he's the founder and managing partner at Nile Capital Group. And he serves on the boards of Nile's portfolio holding companies, Strategic Global Advisors, Denali Advisors, and Convergence Investment Partners. Previously, he was the director of institutional investments North America at Investec Asset Management. And prior to joining Investec, he was the managing director of global distribution at Artio Global Investors, Julius Baer Investment Management, JBIM. And during that tenure, he helped build assets under management from 800 million to a peak of 78 billion with a B. ultimately resulting in an IPO and a New York Stock Exchange listing in 2009. He's also been managing director and portfolio manager of the value equity team at Wells Capital Management, vice president at Shearson Lehman Brothers. He holds a chartered financial analyst designation and received his MBA from UCLA Anderson School of Management. He also attended the IMD Global Leadership Program in Switzerland. He's a member of the Los Angeles Society of Financial Analysts. He serves on the board of directors and the investment committee for the California Community Foundation. He also is with UCLA Anderson School of Management Board of Advisors and the board of directors, the investment committee of the YMCA of Metropolitan Los Angeles. Please welcome to our virtual stage, Mel Lindsey.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. I feel honored to be able to present to this esteemed group. I'd like to just share some comments about my background over the next 15 to 20 minutes. And I would rather view this as a dialogue versus a monologue. So feel free to jump in at any time and, ask questions. I think it may be helpful to kind of go back to sort of where I came from. Born and raised in San Pedro, California. My parents immigrated from the segregated South of Mississippi. And for those of you who know Mississippi know that, back in the 60s and the 50s, there wasn't much opportunity for African Americans. And so my dad was basically selling moonshine, tried to enroll in Mississippi State, couldn't get enrolled, and decided to migrate west. And it seemed like a whole new world opened up for him. Grew up in San Pedro. San Pedro is a pretty unique place in the sense that it's very diversified, but I would call it the right kind of diversity, meaning that it was open to new people coming in and contributing. My dad started a cabinet making business with this Yugoslavian guy, and they basically got a contract with the Naval Shipyard building cabinets and some of the ships, and that opportunity wasn't available in Mississippi. My mom started, sewing for people in the neighborhood and started making wedding dresses. And she had all kind of clients, whether it was white, Black, Mexican, Greek, you name it. And so San Pedro felt like a very accepting place as a kid growing up. You got to meet different people and you got to be able to communicate and work with different people of different backgrounds. And I think it was accepting because most of the people there were immigrants, the Yugoslavians or Croatians, the Italians. They were kind of like ethnic white people. They weren't the traditional white people that may have been in some of the bigger cities. And so given that, I think they said, look, we need everybody's human capital in this city to make this city great. And because of that, I felt like I was always accepted. My uncle, who's African-American, went to San Pedro High School. He was athlete of the year. My sister was one of the first African-American cheerleaders at San Pedro High School. And so, I just don't think those opportunities existed in a lot of other cities. So went on, went to college. Halfway through college, my dad got sick. He had vascular disease, had one of his legs amputated, thought he was going to die. So I actually dropped out of school for a while and to try to help him with their bills. He had a good business, but he wasn't very financially literate. And so he didn't charge, I don't think, the proper fee for the service he was providing. So when I dropped out, I was basically working in a grocery store started as a box boy and then a checker, and wasn't even thinking about going back to school. It was basically just giving them all my check to make sure that they could stay in their house. And while I was in the store, this African-American guy would come in, pretty regularly, had a suit and tie on. And I would talk to him a little bit about business and about, the fact that I was reading Business Week and all this other stuff. And he was like, so you're just going to settle? And I said, what do you mean? He said, I see you here a lot. Doesn't look like you're in college. People who came before you sacrificed so guys like you can go to college. And I tried to explain to him what happened to my parents and, that I was in college, and he didn't want to hear it. He was like, blah, 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 blah. Next time I come in here, I want to know that you're back in school. And so he really encouraged me to go back and get re-registered. And so I was able to graduate in 5 years instead of 4 years. So I graduated in '87 from undergrad. And while I was in school, I tried to figure out what I was going to do. And I also wanted to get out as soon as possible so I can go back and help my parents. And economics was the one degree that had the fewest amount of courses. And so I just said, let me just hurry up and get out. And I took economics courses, and I tried to figure out what am I going to do with an economics degree. And one of my professors said, why don't you try to work on Wall Street and get an internship? And so I got an internship with a local Dean Witter office downtown. And when I graduated, they sent me off to New York and was in their first training program post the 1987 crash, which was Black Monday. And so not many Wall Street firms were interviewing at that time. Not many were having training programs. So as we're going through the first year of our training, the analyst program, a lot of the other firms that didn't have training programs felt that they had a good call option to hire people who were already trained, and they didn't have to spend the expense of going through the hiring. So they were picking off people from our training program. And so Lehman Brothers approached me about moving over to Lehman, and tossed and turned about it, talked to my dad. My dad was old school. He was like, to put it in his words, those white people gave you a job, you owe it to them to work for them for 30 years, right? Because he was sort of a different background in terms of opportunities. And I said, Dad, but they're going to allow me to move back to the West Coast, and I think I can set up a business here with Lehman. And he was just totally against it. He's like, you should work for a company for 30 years, get a gold watch and a toaster, and be happy they gave you a job. And then I told him what the compensation was if I moved over. And he was just totally shocked that they were going to double my salary and bonus. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, and pardon me here, he said, they showed the wrong Negro the rules, but he didn't use the term Negro. He used the other N word. And that kind of set the stage. I had no idea how prescient that comment was, but that set the stage for the rest of my career, because what I learned in every industry, in every time in our life, there's certain rules. And oftentimes it's the people who are in control who set the rules and who control the rules and who basically set up the game for them to win. I mean, if you think about sort of ancient times, the people who created the most value and had the most value were the landowners, and they were the oligarchs. They were the people who were able to use the land to create revenue basically on the backs of other people's labor. And so real estate was the most valuable asset. And then during the global sort of industrial revolution, you had corporations that created assembly lines, and then the Rockefellers and the Fords and the J. Paul Gettys became the most wealthiest individuals, and that was through corporate ownership. And so corporations were the most valuable asset. And then in the sort of the 21st century, now you have companies that are using data. They're collecting your and my data, and those companies have become the most valuable sort of folks, whether it's Facebook or Amazon or Airbnb. And they really don't own assets, but they just own our data, and we give that data away to them freely. But the point is that when they have that asset, whether it's real estate or corporations or data, they set the rules. And it's up to us to always learn what the rules are, because if we don't, we're either going to be on the controlling side or the recipient side of that. And so when my dad said, they show the wrong person the rules, I spent sort of the rest of my life trying to understand, when there's an asset involved, who sets up the rules to own that asset, to manipulate that asset, and to control that asset. And so having worked for Lehman Brothers, I set up, basically they gave me a desk and a card, and I just basically start calling on asset managers. And Wells Fargo was one of my larger accounts. I was able to provide them our research on companies, primarily in the credit card space, the financial services space, focusing on banks, insurance companies. And after covering them for 6 years, they became Lehman Brothers' largest revenue generator. And a guy named Bob Bissell, who was a CIO, invited me to come join Wells on the buy side. So instead of selling them our research, I was actually starting to manage portfolios and became an analyst and a portfolio manager. They sent me back to business school at UCLA. I did that for about 10 years in terms of working on portfolio management. And it was at a time when Wells was doing a lot of mergers and acquisitions. They merged with First Interstate Bank. They merged with Wachovia. They merged with Norwest. And during that time, as they were merging, they acquired all these asset management firms. And as they were acquiring them, they needed someone on the transition team to integrate those firms within the larger investment asset management organization that Wells had. And so they kind of picked me to kind of be part of that integration. And it really gave me a chance to cut my teeth on the business of asset management and less on the analyzing of companies. So I got a chance to merge different companies from First Interstate Bank into Wells Fargo, from Wachovia into Wells Fargo, from Norwest into Wells Fargo. And it really gave me a sense of how to evaluate money management firms, how to see if they were creating value or if they were just Me Too copycats. And over that process, it felt like the bank was turning more into an asset management firm and less from a bank and lending organization. And so I did that up until about 2002. And then a Swiss company knocked on my door and said, you know, we're trying to grow our institutional business in the US and get out of the private banking business. I don't know if you remember back in 2001 and 2002, post the 9/11 crisis, a lot of banks that were private Swiss banks in Switzerland were being put under pressure to give up people who had private banking accounts in Switzerland. They said it was because of terrorism and they wanted to know who had these secret accounts, but it was really because that the US government wanted those people to pay taxes on the assets they were holding outside of the US. So they basically went after a lot of the Swiss private banks, and Julius Baer decided that they were going to get out of the private banking business in the US and move more into the institutional business. And since I had a background of working in a bank and an institution, I was a good candidate for them to really grow their business in the US. And so they decided to give us $20 million, set up this new LLC where the Baer family owned 70% and me and my team owned 30%. We used that $20 million to buy different asset management companies. And they were small at the time. We lifted out a company from JP Morgan. We bought a team from Deutsche Bank. We lifted out a team from Credit Suisse that focused on sort of credit. And then we also lifted out a team from Julius Baer that was focused on private wealth, but we institutionalized them. And so it was a total of about 800 million in assets. And through organic growth, we grew them to about 78 billion at a time when there's a lot of money focused on liquid assets. And Julius Baer had this global approach, which resonated with a lot of clients, primarily institutional clients. And so I did that from 2002 to about 2008. And we created such a big business. When the Baer family asked us what we should do going forward, I said we should sell it. And so we hired Goldman Sachs as a banker. They took us on a roadshow, and in 2008, we thought we were going to go public for about $2.5 billion. But the next financial crisis hit, which was the lending financial crisis, which basically led to the overall market drop in about 40%. So we weren't going to go public. No one was going public at the time. So we postponed the IPO and we decided to change the name to Artio Global. We built the business back up. The assets dropped from 80 billion to about 40. We built it back up to 58, and we were the first financial services company to go public in 2009. So we worked there, me and my team, for another 3 or 4 years, and then a company called Aberdeen bought them off the New York Stock Exchange, which freed me up to get most of my equity out. And so me and my partner said, what are we going to do next? And I've always wanted to start my own company, but I wanted to focus on women and minorities who were managing money, who didn't get an opportunity to participate in this $100 trillion business of institutional asset management. And so I worked with the guys and we created a company called Nile Capital Group. And why the name Nile? Number one, it was in Africa, in Egypt, and we felt that Nile represented true investment pillars, meaning that if you think about what happened in the Nile Valley, the Nile River is a river that is flowing northward. So it's contrarian. Its scale, if you think about the pyramids and how they were built, it took about 2.3 million stone blocks to build it. So the scale was there, is what you want in an investment business. It was innovative. It's one of the oldest and most prolific scientific regions of the world, created sort of a lot of the math and sciences. And it was consistent. If you go inside of a pyramid in the Nile Valley, regardless of the temperature outside, the pyramids have 68.5 degrees constant temperature without any air conditioning. And that happens consistently around the year. And happens to be the average temperature around the world. So there were a lot of investment corollaries for the Nile Valley. And plus, I wanted to remind myself and my team that, people of African descent come from greatness. When you travel around the world and you go to Europe and you look at the ruins, you have a lot of these European statues and monuments that show the greatness of white people, but we didn't have a lot of examples of the greatness of Black. So I wanted to make sure that subtly or in people's face that Nile was created from in a reminder of the greatness that we had in the Nile Valley. And so that really created Nile, but I also wanted to have an investment approach that would resonate with all people. And so when I think about what worked at Julius Baer, or what worked at Wells Fargo, what worked at Lehman Brothers, we came up with this thing called Tides. And Tides is what we believe are the components you need to create a successful investment company. And so it starts with T and Tides for talent. And so you always want skill versus luck. You don't want an investment approach that focuses on, did you get lucky or did you do the right things quantitatively and qualitatively to create talent. Innovation. The investment business has a orthodoxy, which is, kind of stick to your knitting, but I don't believe that's the right approach. I think you have to have a culture of constantly innovating because people copy you. You always want a barrier to entry. And if the barriers or the moats are very narrow, people will copy you and steal your profits. If the barriers are wide, it's hard for people to copy you. So if you think about it, if you're constantly innovating, It's an accordion effect. You get a wide moat when you innovate, people copy you, and then that accordion shrinks and the moat becomes narrow. And then you innovate again, it becomes wide. So you have to have a culture of innovation. Diversity, there's a lot of talk about diversity these days. And usually when people talk about diversity, they make it seem like they're sacrificing returns if you include Black or brown or women or minorities as part of the diversity. But I actually think diversity actually creates better returns. And the way I try to explain it when I'm talking to investors is, look, there's 3 types of diversity. 2 are good and 1 is bad. The first diversity that's good is information diversity. Where do you get your information that's different from the rest of the people on Wall Street who are analyzing companies? Do you have drones that can hover over car dealerships and capture VIN numbers before Wall Street analysts do? Or do you have natural language processing where you can use machine learning and look at corporate CEOs and what they are saying quarter by quarter to see if they're consistent or not? So in my mind, that's good diversity. There's also demographic diversity, where, do people that you work with go to different schools, different age groups, different genders? And are you just hiring 5 white guys who live in Connecticut, who catch the train into the city? All their kids go to the same private school and they all went to HBS. And if you do that, you get locked into groupthink. And I'm trying to get away from groupthink because Wall Street is all about having that edge. The one diversity that I think is bad is value diversity, when people on the same team have different values. And regardless of your age group, your color, your preferences, if you have a value and a mission that's aligned, but uncoupled skill sets, that usually leads to a better outcome. And so we want sort of diverse backgrounds, but we want aligned values. Sometimes people have different values and it just causes arguments over resource allocation. The E in TIDES is for economies of scale. Whenever we invest in a company, we want to be able to have the ability to scale the assets at least 4 times without changing the risk return profile. And so if there's a firm, they manage $1 billion and we think they can only manage $1.2 billion, we're probably not interested. If we think they can manage $5 billion and we can help them scale that, then we are interested. And the last component of TIDES is speed. How quickly do you go from idea generation to execution of the security in the portfolio? Or how quickly do you manage having the right vehicles in the right channel at the right time? The business has changed. When I first got into it, it was primarily a liquid markets business where the premium was focused on publicly available stocks and bonds or currencies. More recently, it's gone through an environment where hedge funds being, long, short, different investment pools. Now it's really focused on private markets and private credit, which baffles me because there's usually a liquidity premium associated with investments. Now people are paying a premium for locked up investments, which to me makes absolutely no sense. That people lock up your money and they charge more for it versus having a liquid investment, and now they're charging less for the liquidity. So you have to, I think, be able to adapt, and speed is a big component of that. And speed is not new. I know Stephen Turner always likes to say, "Go Bruins." And the reason why I love the Bruins is because of John Wooden. John Wooden had the best line: "Be quick, but don't hurry." When you do something, practice doing it quickly. Because if you hurry when you're in a tight situation, you usually make mistakes. But speed is nothing new to this global economy. If you think about back in 2000, 52% of the companies in the Fortune 500 no longer exist today. And people chalk it up to digital disruption, meaning that they didn't keep up with technology. I would just say it's just speed. They were just slow. If you think about Walmart and Kmart, they had the exact same business model, the exact same supply chain management. Walmart was just faster than Kmart. And now Amazon is doing it faster than Walmart. And so a lot of the value is accruing to firms that do things much more quickly than companies that do it slowly. So that's our sort of our tides model, but the tides model doesn't really work unless you have people or allocators that are desiring that asset class. So what we try to do when we think about firms that have the tides model from a bottom-up perspective, what about the top-down perspective? Is there money flowing into that strategy? And so we also do money flow analysis, where we say which group of assets and money flows does this company fall into? So the first part of the money flow is there search activity now for what you do? And we can calculate that using data analytics. Or is there market share you can take from the incumbents who are underperforming, who have that? And we call that market share grab. And the last bucket is what we call missionary work. So those are strategies that we believe the manager is generating good returns, it's predictable, it's consistent, but not a lot of allocators know about it. And so you have to convert souls. So we call it missionary work, where you have to do white papers or go to conferences and speak about the strategy. So our approach to growing the businesses that we acquire, again, is this top-down money flow analysis and this bottom-up tides approach that we've practiced since our days at Julius Baer. So I'll stop there and open it up for questions. Happy to talk about what I've talked about in detail or any of the other topics that I mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you, Melvin. You covered part of it, but I was going to ask the definition of asset management and how it has changed, what that really, asset management firms, because that process has evolved. What was it and what is it now? But if you could elaborate a little bit on that more, so people are kind of clear. When they hear asset management, it's used in a lot of different ways, but specifically to what you guys are doing.
Sure. So when I think of the term asset management, I think of, having a discretionary portfolio where it's diversified and you hire someone to make those decisions on your behalf. And there's different asset classes that are associated with the diversified portfolios. You could be managing sort of large cap stocks, which are sort of like General Motors, Apple, AT&T, Netflix. So you're trying to figure out which stocks are going to perform the best, or liquid securities. You can buy and sell them on a daily basis, and you hire a manager to do that. There's also small cap companies, and those are the newer companies that maybe like the telemedicines, the companies that just went public, lesser known, but they're smaller and they have a higher growth trajectory. And that could be more small cap. You could have international companies like Honda, Mitsubishi, Toyota that are exporters in Japan. They're not dollar denominated, but you want to participate in the growth of those other global companies. It could be private equity, right? Where they're not publicly traded companies, private companies. So if you think about sort of McDonald's would be in a public traded company environment, and In-N-Out Burgers would be a private company. And so that exists with bonds as well. You could have publicly traded bonds and privately traded bonds that are not necessarily securitized. So there's all these different disciplines of asset management. And as you're creating your portfolio as an institution or an individual, you want a diversified set of asset classes. It could be currency, it could be Bitcoin, it could be stocks, bonds, real estate. And so what we try to do at Nile is find these different companies and find the best managers of these companies, buy a small stake in them, and help them grow.
Thank you. So how does the funds that are focused on things that benefit sort of our community in terms of affordable housing or real estate investments, or is that included in those asset classes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As you mentioned in my background, we just invested in a company, I believe the name is SDS, and they do not only affordable housing, but fabricated homes. And they partner with some of the Black churches in the LA area where they're using their parking lots because they have so much real estate. And so we're putting these fabricated homes on the parking lots to try to solve for the homeless problem. And they can build these homes for much less than what some of these developers are using. And so it's a combination of really reducing the cost of home ownership and a collaboration with a lot of the major Black churches.
Our guest last week with the CDFI, she was envisioning holding $1 billion in her hands. Can you envision holding $1 billion? Because you see billions of dollars on your screen, but imagine holding $1 billion.
Well, holding it in my hand would be great.
One of your board member, Henry J. Bratton, I work with him. He sits on our board for a tennis program that we do in Los Angeles. Henry is absolutely awesome. He's helped a number of our kids get college scholarships, and I get accepted at many of the great schools in order to get a tennis scholarship. So cool guy. Love Henry.
Yeah, no, Henry's amazing. We went to the same business school at different times. And his office is right next to mine. I don't know if he's here because I haven't heard him, but he is absolutely amazing. He just got reappointed to the USA Triathlon organization. I think he has the Brandon House at Stanford, which is one of the first Black houses there. I've known him for over 20 years. He joined me at Nile. He wasn't part of our original team at Julius Baer, but he had more of a private equity deal structuring background, and he's been absolutely instrumental in our growth.
Yeah, he's an amazing businessman.
It also looks like you have a relationship with my wife's cousin, Tracy Lawrence.
Oh yeah, Tracy is, again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm using the word phenomenal with everyone you guys bring up, but Tracy is absolutely, I don't know if you guys know Tracy. She, Stanford undergrad, Harvard Business School, worked in the entertainment industry, is kind of like an executive coach and keeping people on track. And, when you're dealing in the entertainment industry, you're dealing with a lot of big egos. And to be able to keep people focused and not make it about them all the time, but making it about the mission, she was really good at that. And as I was putting together my advisory team, I wanted someone who had dealt with the most difficult personalities, because I think second to the entertainment industry is the asset management or Wall Street. They have the second biggest egos. They just don't have the entourage. So to keep people on track, I wanted somebody like Tracy to, once we acquired a firm, she gets in, she gives people personality tests. She kind of keeps them focused on the mission, but she also acts as my spy. Because, when you buy a firm, you really never know what you're getting. And, everybody's on their best behavior. And so I don't know if you ever watched that show Billions. There's a lady named Wendy. She's our Wendy.
Cool.
So, one last question I have from Crystal.
Okay.
Did you ever see the guy from the grocery store again?
I did. Yeah. So he became a good mentor of mine. And sadly, he was African American. His wife was white, and his daughter was on the USC volleyball team. And she never felt like she fit in. Either the white people didn't accept her, or the Black girls didn't accept her. She wasn't Black enough, she wasn't white enough. And she committed suicide. And basically got her father's gun and blew her head off in her room. And so I helped him kind of clean up, and he stayed in contact with me, introduced me to his son, and he tried to get me to go into the insurance business. And so I just didn't feel like insurance was for me. but he was very supportive of me kind of going and working on Wall Street. And then I had another really good mentor, Daryl Brown, who you guys probably all know. He was super helpful early in my career, always advising me. Whenever I call him, he would take my call, and he really kind of pushed me in the direction of more Wall Street.
Spoke to him this morning.
Oh, yeah. He great family friend. I tell you, man, that guy, whenever I called him, he was there for me. And
he's our guest next month, Stephen. I forget the date, but he'll be
The
on the
last
community
Thursday.
briefing.
Yeah, the last Thursday of the month of February.
Last Thursday of February. So
Yeah.
definitely come back then if you can to tune in. Crystal, I'm all done. It's up to you.
Okay. So what you're doing is, when we look at our community, our Black community, most of us don't think on those levels. And you had some great mentors along the way. How can we identify mentors that can help our community grow their businesses so they're even a blip on the thought process of somebody acquiring them? Because most of our businesses stay small, and we need some sort of trajectory strategy to help them grow. That's the only way we're going to close our wealth gap, is to increase the revenue and the economics that are flowing through our Black communities. You have any ideas or suggestions to work to that?
Sure. I think when you look at a lot of the white firms, I was at Wells and I saw, tons of mergers and acquisitions, alliances. At Julius Baer, same thing. At Lehman, you think about Goldman Sachs and all these big companies. You think about, whether it's Netflix. What I see happen a lot with these companies is that they're comfortable with alliances, mergers, acquisitions. They don't always have to be HNIC, right? I think what happens, because when we start our own companies, we get so tired as a system, right? That we just want to be independent. And that independent, I think we've gone too far where we forget about working together and creating alliances. We have so many small companies out there and they're all doing these little specialty things. But if we thought about maybe collaborating more and working together and building bigger companies and then acquiring and then building more revenue and creating EBITDA where you have cash flow, we can acquire more companies. I think that would help. Also just creating a pipeline of the next generation of leaders, people who have kids that are focused on the different aspects that we didn't grow up with, right? When I was coming up, if you were smart, people said you should be a doctor or a lawyer, right? And that's where they focused all the people of color, or an accountant. So no one said you should be a hedge fund manager or you should create a tech company. But now I think, there's so many ways to get an education. You don't have to go through the traditional channels. And there's so much in data analytics that we have a lot of skills that this next generation is creating. And we got to be comfortable bringing those people in and giving them opportunities, setting up internships. But more importantly, how you can learn, from these folks coming in. When I was growing up, my dad said, your life should be about three things: learning, earning, and returning, right? So in your early years, learn as much as you can about the job at hand. Don't worry about an income. And then if you do that, you'll earn a premium over your peers. And you should never spend all the money you earn. You should give back. You should give back to your community, your church, your neighborhood, the next generation. And it's like this universal recycle sign, right? The more you give back, the more you get. And I learned from my son more than I ever thought I would, because he grew up in this sort of tech world. And so I think we need to be comfortable with, number one, collaboration at the top and maybe setting up business alliances. And number two, just continue to bring in fresh ideas to kind of keep you on the leading edge of your business.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Edwin has a question. Welcome, Edwin.
Oh, thank you. And good to see you, Crystal, and
You
everyone.
as well.
New Year to all of you. Looking forward to an incredible 2022. Melvin, great information, man. And kudos to you for all that you've gone through and what you've become and Nile. My question is, in the Black community, we don't have generational wealth. And but at the same time we do have some funds that we can invest. And my question is, are there investment groups that you are in charge of that maybe someone like myself can give a small amount to become a part of that investment group, and collectively we can grow into something significant?
I'm not in any investment groups because I acquire these companies and don't want to get accused of using that to have people invest in them. But I do have some friends that are in the business that I think focus more on high net worth investing, that I'm happy to share some of the names of people I trust and their approach to investing. I think in order to sort of create that generational wealth, you got to try to figure out, okay, how do I get my passive income greater than my expenses, right? and how do I get to the point where my investments become more important than my day job? And that's helpful in a number of ways. Number one, it just creates more happiness. They did some studies on whether you rely on your job or whether you rely on your passive income for people who are happier. And the ones that had more sort of mailbox income were happier than people who were even at the people who were making more from their day job. So, we have been denied so much for so many years that we have this sort of pent up demand to be consumers in a lot of ways. And it has more to do with that we were kept from so many things. And so when we get a chance to buy stuff and show people what we got, we want to do it. And I don't blame people for that, but I think we got to go back to how do we save and invest this so we can pass it on to the next generation, which is why I'm in the asset management business. If you look at sort of where we are in terms of women and diverse managers of this over $100 trillion business, only 1.4% of the asset managers are people of color. And when I first got in the business, it was about 1.4%. So we haven't changed things that much. And it kind of tells me it must be a good business if they're keeping us out.
So true. My family and I, with our boys, we actually play cash flow and the game that Robert Kiyosaki created back in the 80s. And that is an excellent game for you to be able to practice how to create passive income so that you can get out of the rat race and get into a freer place of living and happiness. And it has really shaped my nephews' mindsets. And they're in college, they just got out of college, one's in college. And so now they're thinking about investment. We all sit around the table and talk about our investments. And I think it has to start there. You have to understand the difference between living paycheck to paycheck and actually creating what you call is that mailbox money. So that's a strategy, Edwin. Maybe we can all have cash flow parties. At least get them in the mindset of buying stocks and understanding trades and acquisitions and things like that. So you got to start somewhere, right?
Well, and also do some succession planning. I mean, so succession planning can work for, if you own real estate, to make sure you have the right trust set up, so you can avoid maybe some of the taxes and not going through probate. Also with businesses, if your family owns a business, how do you make sure it continues past your generation and to the next generation? And so I think other groups do a better job of making sure that the asset that they create gets passed on to the next generations.
I think so. Thank you so much, Melvin. You have enlightened us and inspired us. And again, what a great way to start January 2022, working toward increasing our capacities and working smarter and not harder. And so many of us are doing that. So thank you so much. We so appreciate your journey. And please come back and join us, and we will definitely be sharing this video out there in the world to our population. Is Miss Colette Moore still here? She had an update for us. Oh, China's doing it.
Yes, I am.
Hi, China.
Everybody. How's it going?
Good. Happy New Year.
Good.
Happy New Year. Good to see everybody. Colette, she had a family emergency. So I will be covering some information and opportunities. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, let me make sure.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Awesome. Great information today as well, Melvin. That was a lot of good information. We're actually launching a self-program sister entrepreneur loan fund in the month of February. And it just made me think about that. Sharing information with African-American Black women so that they can do better and be better in their businesses and in their communities as well. So
Like that, sister entrepreneur.
Mhm.
yes. So hold on, I think it's sharing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we see it.
Awesome. So great to be invited to participate in the community briefing. I think Robin put it in the chat. We're here to share information and opportunities to grow our communities. So my name is China Spikes. I'm the Associate Director with Pacific Coast Regional Small Business Development Center. We serve small businesses from the start, inception, all the way to where they don't even need us anymore. But we do one-on-one advising, entrepreneurial training workshops that are no cost. It's federally funded through the SBA. So the money is coming from somewhere. But our clients do not have to pay for the services. Okay, so we know that the IDO closed December 31st, but they're still processing some of the IDOs that were submitted by or before that due date. So if you know anybody that has applied for IDO reconsideration and they're still kind of in a loop and trying to figure out what's going on, you guys can send an email to us. Our information is at the bottom. Info at pcrsbdc.org. We have a contact there that has been helping us to process some of those backlogged IDO reconsideration applications that were due before or on that due date of the 31st of December of last year. This is just a comparison. We had been utilizing this during our presentations, comparing the IDO and a standard SBA loan, and just sharing this with our clients because they weren't applying for this lending opportunity. And just looking at the interest rates in comparison to the SBA and how long you have to pay it off. And so they didn't actually understand that this money was available to them. And so we were, running and we were trying to partner with them so that they can get their applications in. All right. So the Comeback Checks program that is coming up. So round 3 is opening January 24th. And it is a program that will provide $5,000 grant for approximately 5,000 businesses in the city of Los Angeles. So I have the link here. Crystal, I'm not sure if the presentation will be available to everybody. Is that something that we can do so at least that they have the links?
Yes, if you send me over the link, I'll include it when I send out the video for the show for today and the announcement for next week.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we all have the COVID-19 tax credit, and that is for businesses that are trying to get paid with retaining their employees. We know that there has been a lot of um, conflict and hindrances with trying to keep on the employees. I know that EDD is not releasing those funds as easily now. And so slowly but surely, employees are returning back to the workplace. And so we wanted to let all the businesses know that there is availability for tax credit to retain your employees. Okay, so the logistics victory of Los Angeles, the Lowe's LA provides PPE at a low cost. So just sharing this information as well. So I will definitely make sure that the presentation gets to Crystal, so you guys can kind of go back and reference some of these opportunities that have been made available to small businesses. Okay, so we have this looking to win contracts. So this is a webinar because we know how hard it is to apply for these different RFPs. And so we are sharing this information. It is the ultimate training program for businesses seeking to succeed in contracting. So we are partnering with the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce and actually referring more clients to this program. Colette herself, she owned her business for 8 years and applied for several contracts. And, you know, every time she shares her experience, she gets flustered and frustrated about it, just thinking about and remembering how complicated it was. So this is available. It's a 3-phase training program, and there's so many benefits: learning to process the contracting, preparing your business to win contracts, identify contract opportunities, develop and submit contract proposals, win, manage, and execute contracts. All right, so again, we have the California COVID rent relief. So landlords and renters can get help with unpaid rent. And so the process is here as well. And we'll share the information with you guys. There are another opportunity to get some free at-home COVID-19 test.
And China, Dr. Mays is going to speak on the COVID test. We've got her standing by on that one.
Oh, okay. Let's get this then. I can still put that link in the chat. I think I have that one ready and available. So again, we have upcoming webinars that we do on a weekly basis. So we have a certification workshop. We have business to start your business. We have commercial leasing checklist, business plan essential. We have social media and branding. We have marketing. We have accounting. We have a restaurant academy as well. So please check out our website at www.pcrspdc.org. And so you can check out some of our workshops that we have calendared for the year. So much good new content that we're sharing with our clients. Our financial fitness cohort number 4 is supposed to be starting as well. So be on the lookout for that information. Also, profit projections. We have been talking to our clients about having a profit and understanding your numbers. So this is a workshop that we do bi-weekly, sharing information. We have a template that we have been utilizing that gives a wide array of templates, from the balance sheet, income statement, cash flow analysis, all of these different things by only filling out just a few fields in an Excel sheet, and then it populates it by itself.
China, I want to, again, this
Yes.
is Stephen Turner, I represent the Black Business Association. I want to thank you for the wealth of the information. We'll put your information under the link for everyone to know about the services that Pacific Coast Regional provides. But at this moment, I'd like to pivot to Dr. Vicki Mays.
Awesome. Okay, not a problem.
Hello, family. I hope everybody's staying well. You know, I see that's my job, is to keep Black people well so they can be wealthy. So we want the two W's to go together, well and wealthy. So this is just quick. China's on top of stuff. You go, sister. China was about to tell you. Anyway, I put in 3 links. And the reason I put in 3 different links is so that however you receive information, one of them, for example, lets you hear the news people tell you, but these are links for you to order the tests from the White House. The White House is providing every household 4 free tests, and it's going to go per address. Now, of course, you know, being the person I am, we already said to the White House, we got 3 gen families. So you should have done it by not the address. You should have done it by people in the household. So, you know, I can't promise you that can get turned around fast enough. But I will say that everyone on the inside is saying, order them now. We don't know how quickly things are going to run out. We don't know, for example, whether or not, you know, this surge is going to, you know, really continue. Part of the surge that we're just seeing is from Martin Luther King holiday among the children. So, you know, they're just these, you know, groups within groups of people that are, you know, becoming infected. So order your kits now. Now, the one thing that I say do is to go not to the post office address. China, you put that in. We have too many problems with the post office. I tell them go to the covidtest.gov, you know, and order them because, you know, with the post office, even though they're stood up as the entity that we're to deal with, I say go to the COVID website to actually make the order because I think it's just safer in terms of things that we've seen with how overwhelmed right now the Postal Service is. The Postal Service is going to ship them out, but let's make sure you're registered with the covidtest.gov, which is the federal site from the White House. Okay, family, again, while you're getting wealthy, you got to stay well.
Yep. For sure.
Thank you, Dr. Mays.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. And if you need, you're going to order your mask. I actually got my mask from Bianca. It was awesome. I feel much safer when I go to the supermarket, but other than that, I'm not leaving the house anyway. So, and nobody's coming into the house until we get past this. So thank you guys so much. Welcome to everyone that's here. Stephen, you want to take us out? Ms. Robin Phillips is here. Hey, Ms. Robin. And
what I'd like to do is just make a brief comment. I'd like Robin to close today. But
Okay.
Next week, if we talk about nonprofit organizations, we are privileged to have Mark Wilson, who's running one of the most financially stable nonprofit organizations in South Central, providing not only jobs, but also working with the labor and structure and engagement. But with that case, tune in on the 27th of January for Mark Wilson for the community, the Coalition of Responsible Community Development. Robin Phillips, close us out.
Hey, you guys, it's, you know, again, the whole mission of this community briefing is to provide up-to-date current information that you can use. And all we ask you to do is invite others, because again, what tends to happen is our community says, you know, we didn't hear about that. Nobody told us about it. Mr. Lindsey, you were exceptional. I worked in secondary market back in the day when Mike Milken did have an entourage. And after they put him in jail, there was no more entourages, right? But again, you guys, I'm doing well. I plan on coming back 100% next month after I finish my last round of chemo on January 31st. Prayers change things. So let's keep praying for each other. Let's keep lifting each other up. And let's keep, again, growing this audience, because the information is just so very, very vital in our day-to-day. And Dr. Vicki Mays, thank you for what you do to make sure that we stay safe so we can be well and we can grow our businesses. And again, you guys, let's have a great week, and see you next Thursday.
All right, guys, be safe out there. Mask up. Go get your mask. Keep people out your house.
Wash your hands.
Even wash your hands. Even your teenagers, make them do a test before they walk in the house. Keep yourself safe.
Take care, everyone.
It's been great. Everyone that I know that's gotten COVID is because of a teenager or a college-age student. Love you guys much and want to see you. Keep it up.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.